Hello, I'm Archbishop Robert Carlson. Let me take this opportunity to thank you for placing an importance on Catholic education for your children. A key component of Catholic education is the safety of our students and of our schools. The teachers and students regularly practice drills to prepare for an emergency. This DVD and the supplemental material are to help in providing additional information when there is a fire, earthquake, or tornado while your child is at school or at home. Please remember me in your prayers. You know that I am praying for you and for your children. Thank you.
My name is Sandra Barker. I'm the Chief Program Officer at St. Louis Counseling, formerly Catholic Family Services. The video you're about to see is for the purpose of educating your children about safety in the event of a natural disaster or fire. The Archdiocese of St. Louis and the Office of Catholic Education and Formation have prepared this video with experts from fire protection and law enforcement. In addition, the emotional well-being of your children has been carefully considered in the making of this video so that the information shared is developmentally appropriate. The goal of this video is to keep all of our children safe through education and awareness. You are always welcome to contact me at St. Louis Counseling if you have any questions or concerns about the emotional well-being of your children.
The Archdiocese has put together this training video to help with your children's emergency plan at school. A lot of that involves what to do in the case of an emergency while they're at school, but there's a lot of things that can be done at home to keep your kids safe at home too, and that's what we're going to talk about today. One of the things we discuss with your kids is memorizing 2 phone numbers. It's vitally important to have those numbers memorized in the case of an emergency where they may not have a cell phone that has those numbers programmed. A lot of teenagers and even adults don't have 2 phone numbers memorized because they rely on their phone so often. So having those numbers in your head just makes it easier if that phone wasn't to work. So a lot of parents think their kids are maybe too young to do that, but I always say if they can memorize the ABCs or if they know if they can sing along to a song on the radio, they're old enough to memorize those 2 10-digit phone numbers, and it's really important to have those memorized. So the discussion we used to have with the kids was, what number do you call in case of an emergency? And everybody would say 911, and the kids still know that answer. What we've had to go beyond that now and talk to kids about how to call 911. When we were all kids, we were pretty certain that you could go into any kitchen in the neighborhood and there would be a phone hanging on the wall, but that's not always the case now. A lot of the kids we talk to in schools, they don't even have landlines anymore, and they're strictly just using cell phones. The test is to ask your kids what number they call in case of an emergency, and they'll say 911, and then slide them your cell phone and say, okay, show me how you would do that on my phone. Getting past whatever lock you have on your phone, navigating the phone to the phone feature and actually dialing those numbers are a lot of things that kids need to know. And I know you're saying, that's the exact reason I put that lock on my phone, is to keep the kids out. And that's fine, but there's an emergency feature on your phone where the kids can access that and dial without knowing that lock. If there was a case where you weren't alert and couldn't dial yourself, that they could take your phone, dial 911. Or if they were at grandma and grandpa's house, or even at a friend's house, and the friend's mom or dad, had a seizure or wasn't alert, that they know how to pick up any phone, get in there, and use that emergency feature. And that's really important to have those discussions with your kids about not only what number do you call, but how do you call 911 in the case of an emergency. Another thing we discuss with kids is knowing their own address, but not only knowing their address, but knowing where to find another address if they were at an unfamiliar house. We talk to kids about if they were at a friend's house and something happened, they needed to call 911, and the dispatcher asked, what's the address where you are? We talk about going outside and looking at the mailbox. Or maybe easier is just to find a piece of mail laying around the kitchen that would have that address. We talk to the kids about it at school, but it's great if you guys can reinforce that message at home. And it doesn't have to be a detailed, serious discussion, but just, maybe over dinner or while you're driving in the car, just talk about these what-if scenarios. Another thing we discuss is that sometimes the rules change in an emergency, and for kids to feel empowered to know that the rules may not apply. What I mean by that is you may tell your kids never go outside without talking to mom or dad first. But if mom's home and she's unresponsive, maybe it's okay to run outside and go to the neighbor's house, or even to flag down a car that's passing by on the street to get help, so that those rules change. You may have rules that never play with mom or dad's cell phone, but especially for little kids, let them know that if there's an emergency, the rules are different, that you may need to get my phone, use those emergency features that we talked about to call for help. We're kind of in the habit of telling kids, like, don't talk to strangers, strangers are bad people. But in an emergency, a stranger can really help and save your life. So even if it's something simple as getting separated at an amusement park or at a big, barbecue festival or fair or something like that, that it's okay. And I always use the term, it's okay to approach another mom or dad. So instead of using the word stranger, or somebody you don't know. So if you see another family with another parent there, that they're a safe person that you can go talk to find help. That notion that during an emergency, the rules aren't always the same is really important. And kids seem to pick up on that and know when is an appropriate time to get help. At school, your kids routinely practice earthquake, tornado, and fire drills, but it's vitally important that you guys are also practicing them at home. Your kids practice fire drills at school every month. Let me ask you guys, how long do you think it takes for a school of 400 students and staff to evacuate? How many minutes do you think that would take?
Like 15 minutes?
Yeah, so a lot. Those are the answers that the kids give to 10, 15 minutes. In actuality, it takes a school that large, they can evacuate the entire building and account for everyone that's out of the building in less than 4 minutes. How long do you think it would take your average family of 4 to get out of the house in the middle of the night?
Our kids?
Yeah, right, exactly.
10 minutes, 15 minutes.
True, and that is the case. A family of 4, it'll take them 10 or 15 minutes to figure out what's going on, get everybody together, and get out of the house. So we talk to the kids. Why do you think you can get 400 people out of a school significantly faster than 4 people out of a house? And the reason is because at school, you have a plan that you've talked about and you practice it regularly. So it's important to have an emergency plan for your family at home. And at school, that plan is very formalized, it's written down, and it's mounted on the wall in each classroom. But that doesn't necessarily need to be the case for your family. It's just something that you need to discuss with everybody in the house, with your kids, so that everybody is on the same page if a disaster will occur. And that's only the first part of having an emergency plan, is that discussion process. The second part is going to be practicing that plan at home. At school, if you ask your kids, what does a fire drill look like, they'll tell you exactly what happens at school. They get up, they line up quietly, they go outside, they get to their meeting place, the teacher counts for everybody, and they sit there quietly. It's the same thing at home. So a fire drill at home might look like you put the kids in bed, close their door, and then mom or dad can hit the smoke detector button or just make the beeping noise. And then watch your kids, watch them roll out of bed, crawl to their door, feel their door for heat. They know to crawl out, and they know the primary exit to get outside to go to the meeting place. But then you can also change that and say, what if you're trying to go down the stairs and the stairs are blocked by fire or smoke or a tree that's fallen through the house? Then what would you do? And see what they do, and then talk to them about going to a second exit, whether it's a window where you would yell out for help if you're on the second floor, or maybe it's a window that they're old enough and comfortable to open that window and push out the screen and get out of the house. And go to your meeting place, whether that be in the front yard or whatever location you've determined with your family. And there you can assess the situation and determine what the next appropriate step is for your family. It's important that you, as parents, understand the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. And if there was a tornado warning with an imminent tornado coming to you, what the course of action would be for your household. You would have a plan in place that you've discussed with your family, but the other half of that is being able to practice that plan before an emergency would occur. So in the case of a tornado, you would want to get your family to the lowest, most interior section of the house and avoid any windows that may be there. You would want to get in the safety position, which is a crouch position with your hands over your head, just like your kids practice at school, but you would do the same thing at home. And then once the tornado has passed, you're going to want to get out of your house as quickly and safely as possible and go to your meeting place, whether that be in the front yard or whatever location you've determined with your family. And there you can assess the situation and determine what the next appropriate step is for your family. Your kids have earthquake drills at school, and they know what to do if an earthquake would happen at school. But it's equally important for the kids to have a plan at home and to know what to do if an earthquake would happen at home. So an earthquake drill at home would look a lot like it does for your kids at school. And in the event of an earthquake, we want to drop, cover, and hold on, and we want to get under something sturdy, and that's to prevent ourselves from getting hurt by any falling debris. If you happen to be in a room where there's no tables or anything that you can get under, you can get in the corner of the room where the wall meets the floor and there's a safe place there. And you can also find protection in a doorway. After the initial earthquake, you're going to want to exit your house through the closest and safest exit possible, and then meet up with your family at your meeting place in the front yard or wherever you've decided. And from there, you can assess the situation and decide what's the best step for your family from there.
We've always wanted to do fire drills at home, but we never wanted to scare the kids.
So it's been my experience that when you practice these things and you talk about these things, it actually empowers the kids. So instead of being scared, they become prepared, and then they'll know exactly what to do in a case of an emergency.
My son is old enough to be watching his younger brother at home alone. How do I prepare them for that if there's an emergency while they're home alone?
I would just incorporate that into your emergency plan, and that's something you can talk about ahead of time, that what if mom and dad weren't home and the kids were home by themselves? What kind of things would they be thinking about doing in an emergency? Some things you can think about is, after an emergency, where they would go to get help, maybe at a neighbor's house or if you have a relative nearby. And also, if a tornado or earthquake happens, you might not be able to rely on cell phone service. So talk to them about what options they would have if their cell phone didn't work to get a hold of mom or dad. And those answers might include going to a neighbor's house for help or discussions like that. Just have those discussions ahead of time and incorporate that into your emergency plan.
If there were an actual emergency at my kid's school, what would I do?
So it's important to keep in mind that your school has an emergency plan that they've put together with the teachers, the administrators, and even first responders from the area. And so trust in that plan that it's been developed. It's also important to review that plan or know that plan for yourself so that if an emergency happens, you know what the school is going to be doing to take care of your kids. And that's really the main goal of an emergency plan, is to keep your child safe while they're at school.
Following an event like an earthquake, tornado, or fire, children will often experience an emotional reaction. This is normal. Some of the behaviors you might notice include fears or anxieties related to the disaster, change in appetite, difficulty in sleeping or nightmares, physical complaints like headaches or stomach aches, moodiness and irritability, having difficulty separating, avoiding activities that they once enjoyed. If some of these responses last longer than 2 weeks, interfere with daily functioning, seem excessive, or are behaviors that you've never seen before, you may want to consult a mental health professional.
The goal of the Archdiocese is to keep your children safe at school, but it's your job to keep them safe at home. So it's vitally important that you guys develop an emergency plan for your family at home, that you discuss that plan so that everybody understands it, and that you practice that plan. So when an emergency happens, your family will be in good shape to be able to get everybody out of the house safely and provide for your family.